Hello, Dwayne. Dwayne, are you there?
Hello, testing, testing one, testing two.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
What we going over today?
Today, I wanted to do some promotion for the book and go into prayer.
Mm.
Make sure everything's working on my end. Weird. All right. All right, everyone. Welcome to open discussion and various topics. I'm not sure which one this is today. As usual, we're going to open up with reciting prayer for spiritual workers, and then we'll open the floor for any questions or comments you guys may have. And then today, maybe over the next couple of sessions, we'll do a discussion on prayer and the mystic prayer technique. There's also a kind of an announcement and promotion for the new book released by Mr. Nehemiah Davis, The Miracle Kit Behind the Power of Prayer. So we'll spend a couple weeks going over some of our notes and past lectures on prayer, as well as promoting uh, the new book, which you can find on Amazon. Both the new book, The Miracle Kit in Prayer, and the inaugural text, Mr. Nehemiah's first released book, The Ancient Language of the Soul, The Mystic Knowledge of Mantra. Oh, before we dive into that, let's open up with reciting the New Lord's Prayer, a prayer for spiritual workers. Right, let's switch this over. Prayer for spiritual workers. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their limitations, would smite me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their weakness, would not heed me. And Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their ignorance, would defile you through me. And I ask, Almighty God, O wondrous power, that your strength may be given to me now, so that I might be fortified by this, so that I might go forward bravely into the world, and despite reception, send forth my love of thee throughout all races of man. Almighty God, give me the power and strength to rise above my comic weakness, the deficiencies in the pattern of my evolution, so that I might evolve and become stronger, I, and even stronger, in thy everlasting light. O God, thy will be done. All right, everyone, welcome again to the open discussion and various topics. Glad to see you again. And as I mentioned earlier at the opening, today we will be going over prayer. I know previous class I mentioned that we'll be starting the transcript for the classes, for the previous classes. As I was going through that and preparing for today, I decided I wanted to do something on prayer to help promote the new book that Mr. Davis has authored. You should see on your screen right now. It's available on Amazon, called The Miracle Kit Behind the Power of Prayer, the mystic knowledge of manipulating the subtle cosmic energies of prana through prayer techniques. So for the next couple of weeks, I actually found a series that we had done on prayer, a 6-week series, in which we looked at the mystic prayer method and the mystic science behind it. So I want to revisit this course. You should see the pamphlet now or the flyer on your screen. I want to revisit this course over the next couple of weeks, as well as the notes and the handouts. And then after we've completed going over the mystic science of prayer and prana class material, we will wrap up this series on prayer by hopefully looking at a couple of excerpts from the text. And also hopefully be able to get some commentary from the author on the book. So over the next few weeks, let's see, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, we'll talk about prayer. We'll wrap up with the book, and that'll give everybody an opportunity to head to Amazon and pick up a copy for yourself. And then later on, I say after a couple of weeks, we'll come back and we'll revisit the text with any questions, or if any questions or comments you guys may have, you can feel free to send them to us via email, or at any subsequent open discussion, you can ask those questions. But I would like to revisit this text a couple of times throughout the year, a few times throughout the year, and turn it into a type of textbook what we use to um, dive deep into the study of prayer and in the manipulation of prana through the prayer technique. And also, I know I did, if you look back at our study sessions playlist, I had read through the entire text of the ancient language of the soul. So there's a playlist directed or dedicated specifically to this book. You're welcome to pick up a copy of the first book, so Ancient Language of the Soul, as well as go back to the playlist and kind of let it play around in the background. It's kind of an audio book. And we also did a couple of classes where we spoke with the author directly, asked them questions, and fill in any other gaps that we may have had in our understanding of the material, as well as field any questions that you guys had. So throughout the year, I will be revisiting these two texts quite often. I'm going to use them as um, our study guides and as our primary source when we're looking to continue on our study session series. And also throughout the study session series, this will be separate from the current open discussion classes or Sunday lecture group series that we have going on. But I'm going to keep revisiting these two texts as our main textbook throughout the year in our study sessions. And we'll try and see if we can dive a little deeper into each chapter. We'll probably spend a few weeks on each chapter because especially in the mantra book and the prayer book, there's so much that was packed into each chapter. that it'll take us a while um, to really dive deep into each book. So I do want, since we do have these materials, these resources made available to us, and we have the benefit of the author here with us. So I really want to take advantage of these two resources. So I highly recommend that everyone pick up a copy of the current book, The Miracle Kit Behind the Power of Prayer, as well as the first book, Ancient Language of the Soul, and continue to study and review these materials because we'll be going um, through them quite a bit in these study session series. All right. So with that, do we have any questions or comments? All right. So a brief look at the mystic prayer method and the mystic science behind it. I'll start off with this brochure, and then we have a couple other resources that we'll go through over the next couple of weeks. Specifically, this handout, which we won't review it today, we'll go through a presentation first, which I'll show you in a minute. The mystic prayer technique described. This is a few pages of detailed explanation on the mystic prayer technique. And also, we had produced a mystic prayer pamphlet that was never released. It's still a work in progress, but this was to be our inaugural issue of the Mystic Learning Hall newsletter. So as it introduces, this is the first edition of the Mystic Learning Hall, and it talks about prayer. I'm going to introduce this later on, and we'll go through this first volume and issue after we finish the presentation. And in this newsletter, the point was to dive deep into a particular subject matter with each newsletter, as well as give updates about the International Mystic Knowledge Center and so on. So I'll go over this a little later. This is just a sneak peek of the newsletter, which will be coming out later. But for today, we are going to look at the detailed study of the power through prayer and prime manipulation presentation. And unfortunately, while this is up, it'll be difficult for me to have the chat window open also, so you'll forgive me if I have to go back and forth a few times to get that up. Actually, let me do this. Let me export it as a PDF so that it'll be easier. Give me 1 minute. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Nimai, or a comment on before we start?
No, only if there's questions.
Okay. Okay. This way is easier. So now I can have the chat window and the presentation at the same time. So today, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at a presentation that was produced several years ago. I believe this was either 14 or 16. I'm not sure. It is a detailed study into the power of prayer through prana manipulation. This um, presentation went along with the 6th week um, class, went along with the 6th week class. And I think there's actually 3 parts of this presentation. So it should take us, I don't intend to take entire 6 weeks to go over it. Maybe a few, maybe like 4 weeks as we go over the presentation materials. And then maybe the last week, that's when we actually look at some excerpts from the book. But in the Mystic Prayer class, we will explain the technique in detail, revealing all the components necessary to make this method of prayer effective. The following diagram, or illustration below, which will go in depth later on, is just a brief look at what we reveal about this ancient form of mystic prayer that brings tremendous results when practiced correctly. The lifting of the arms, as indicated in the picture, in a mudra yogic technique that helps to activate the flow of energies towards the heart chakra and allows us to create a clear channel in which to push this prayer energy through. Next, we have the mystic prayer technique uses a mudra yoga procedure to seal, redirect, and redistribute the prayer power generated and configured with direction and purpose towards a person, place, or thing. The mudra, as displayed in the picture, allows you to stand or sit down in an erect manner with the spine always straight. Number one, the intelligent design that uses the wisdom and knowledge of the laws of karma. These are some of the points that we'll cover throughout the series. Number two, the mind energies used to build and design the mental configuration that holds the stream of energies together in motion. Number three, the aspects of prana that best fit the job at hand or the ability to bring about the results at the chosen target. And number four, the love energy that preserves the projected pranas through the ability to impersonalize the mental feelings that configures the prana's mental flow. All right, so that's what we'll be covering over the next few weeks as we dive into the mystic science of prayer and prana. It will not be as in-depth a discussion as the um, as is presented in the text, the book. But we'll build up to that, and then we'll take a few excerpts from the book as a way to introduce everyone to the Mystic Prayer book, the Mystic Prayer Technique book. And then throughout the year, we'll do a bit more in-depth study of both texts, the Ancient Language of the Soul and the Mystic Prayer Technique. Right? Right, so let's begin. First, we're going to look at the ancient science of manipulating the vital life force. And then we'll describe the miracle kit that allows us to radiate tremendous power through prayer. And we'll talk about using the miracle kit. And we'll look at dynamic, personal, and group prayer techniques. And then finally, we'll look specifically at the prayer rituals, things we can do, including healing, ceremonies, treatments, and so on. The purpose of these classes is to explore several mystic techniques of prana, of prayer, that utilize the power of prana, the vital life forces of nature and the universe, to bring about positive results. The several mystic techniques of prayer are non-personal techniques. They can be used in a group, they can be used individually, In this class, we will also analyze the metaphysical science behind the mystic technique of prayer, which utilizes the knowledge of several belief systems and methods to manipulate this all-pervasive power called prana. A true mystic does not hold himself to any one single religious belief system or religious culture. They embrace all truth wherever it may raise its head. The mystic prayer technique has Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, and Hindu components within its methods, all of which make this mystic prayer technique work and produce tremendous results. This mystic technique of prayer utilizes specific knowledge of prana and the subtle bodies, the power instrument that stands behind the physical makeup of man. The brain of man is seen by the mystic as the receiving and transmitting instrument for man to command and manipulate mind substance, and the pranic flow, cosmic energies, or the vital life force of the universe. The mind substance referred to here is man's mental bodies, the mind substance that enters and exits the body's chakras. This mind substance that makes up the mental envelope that surrounds the physical body and holds all of the mental impressions of man's thoughts and actions. One second, there's something I wanted to interject here. I don't have it here. Sorry about that. Let me just continue then. The pranic flow that is referred to here is the natural flow of prana that permeates the universe, the galaxy, the solar system, the earth, and the physical body. It is all moving in a pattern that expresses the 5 major pranas and 5 minor pranas. The control and manipulation of this power is done through the technique of this mystic prayer method. The physical body is utilized as a transponder of impregnated power to be projected out to the target or intended object of the prayer. The ancient metaphysical science that surrounds speech and the invocation of speech is used in this mystic technique. The ancient mystic hand gestures and body movements that seal, redirect, increase, and project prana is utilized in this mystic prayer method as well. The Christian component of this mystic prayer technique is the invocation of the prayer, the spoken words of a balanced prayer that expresses the purpose and direction of the prayer energies. Most Christian prayers are delivered with feeling, passionate love, and reverent respect, pleading to God to bring forth the desired effects of the prayer. This technique uses the Christian approach to make the method of prayer passionate but dynamic. The mystic element to the Christian component is the underlining direction of the energy produced from the prayer and the mastery of combining it with Buddhist and Hindu techniques of controlling spiritual energies. That is the unique quality of this mystic prayer designed by Dr. Sri Yogiriji George King. The purpose of prayer to the mystic is to call on the all-pervasive subtle energies and to pull these subtle energies down into man's mental auric structure, where these subtle cosmic energies are impregnated with the purpose and direction of the prayer's target. The subtle energies under the proper mental control of a focused mind can become a powerful instrument, building the background fabric and sustaining power for any situation it may be it mental, emotional, or physical, environmental. The impregnated subtle energies with the mental impression of the prayer's purpose and directions becomes the intelligent signatures of the flow of prayer energies being projected. It will take on the job of modifying the background fabric and sustaining power source of any situation. This is essentially done by the prayer practitioner choosing a target for its prayer, then using the mystic prayer technique to pull on the subtle cosmic energies and bring them through your mental auric structure to be impregnated by the will, purpose, and direction of the prayer. These subtle cosmic energies are then projected out of the body using the mystic prayer technique to the targeted person, place, or thing. Once the impregnated subtle energies reach its target, it saturates the target and the immediate surroundings. These projected prayer energies that saturates the target area becomes the energies with constant intelligent signatures marked to become megabits of extra sustaining resources to bring about the prayer results. This all happens within the framework of God's laws. While performing the mystic prayer method correctly, the person who is praying becomes a divine point of consciousness under karmic authority. When the prayer practitioner's full concentration and complete actions are directed towards the goal of generating spiritual energy by this mystic prayer method to its intended goal, he or she begins to operate in part as the great adepts and masters for this brief moment of unselfish actions of radiating spiritual energies to the world. All right, so those of you who are familiar with Operation Prayer Power in this last few slides, Nehemiah kind of reveals the mechanisms of how releasing that stored up prayer energy produces the intended effect on a specific target. So either when we're performing a prayer on ourselves and sending energy to a target either for healing or upliftment, or if we're storing uh, that prayer energy into a medium to be later released to a specific target, the mechanisms on which how that energy um, works and operates in order to bring about its intended purpose um, was just described in a few slides. In this form of dynamic mystic prayer, the whole technique is using all the vital life force in the body that we have control of towards performing this method of prayer. We are taught, when using this technique, to use our intellectual knowledge, jnana, of the Absolute or God in creating the will, the purpose, and the reason for channeling these subtle energies in the name of God. Later on, I think in some subsequent weeks, we'll look at um, the power of love energy. And we'll also look at a graph that details the secret to personal prayer formula. The personal prayer formula was given by Dr. George King in a lecture. Um, is it My Secret to Personal Prayer? Is that the name of the lecture? I don't remember the exact name of it, title of it. But you can find it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the name.
that's the name of it. Okay. You can find the lecture. Um, I don't know if it's still on the Atheist Society website on the store, but they did move all of the lectures to a cloud platform. So you can go, I don't know the exact website. Later on before we finish class, I'll pull the site up and give you the address for it. You can go to that cloud site and you can find the lecture there as well as I don't know if all lectures there, but most of the library of the lectures that were given by Dr. George King publicly are there on the cloud for you to purchase and listen to. And I'd highly recommend um, The Secret to Personal Prayer. It's a wonderful lecture given by George King that talks about his approach to personal prayer and the formula that he came up with, um, or that he uses when not just employing personal prayer, but prayer in general, his approach to prayer and how he's able to see dynamic results. I read this one next. Oops. We are also taught to use our control over our emotions through imagination and visualization to impregnate the subtle cosmic energies being pulled down into our auric structures so that we can redirect these subtle energies to the target of our prayer with a strong purpose and direction. The power of this prayer lies in man's ability to channel all his sensory perceptions toward contacting this subtle power called prana. The ability to pull down this prana into the auric structures of man, then impregnate the prana with our mental purpose and direction. That is, the mystic prayer practitioner uses the following sensory perceptions to harness the pranas: intellectual mental perception, mind using jnana yoga; controlled imagination and visualization, raja yoga; controlled breath techniques, pranayama; directed and controlled emotions in the expressions of speech, mantra sastra; and restricting body movements through mudra yoga throughout the prayer technique. The prayer practitioner uses his intellect to mold and shape the mental energies of the auric structure to bring about a tremendous pull of the universal supply of prana. His belief system within the absolute power of God will shape and mold how strong, lasting, and useful the prayer power will be that he or she calls on through their mental apparatus of consciousness. Prana is the vital life force of all things. In its natural flow, it has no particular target except the aim and object to promote and sustain all things in creation. Interesting. So that last point there, Nehemiah, prana has no particular target except the aim and object to promote and sustain all things.
That's the law. Remember, prana is part of the four creative shakti principles.
Right.
So it's really a signature pattern of the law of karma. So it strictly abides by that law, that the matrix of that law, to make sure that the intelligent movement that was predetermined comes about. You understand?
Uh-huh.
So, and that's with everything, because prana is the fuel of action, and karma governs what? All,
All movement,
yeah, all action.
action.
So, so that's very important to understand. A lot of people really don't understand that. They say they do, but they don't act as though they understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have in the four principles, the four creative principles of Shakti, you have Vinandi, you have Chitta, which is universal mind. Vinati is wisdom, the thing that governs all intelligent movement in creation, because creation actually means action.
Mm-hmm.
To move, to come from a static stillness type state to an active state. So the nanny push out a wave of laws of supreme wisdom that governs all movement, all movement. It's the thing that governs all intelligent and so-called non-intelligent movement. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a grid that it's like the canvas that everything is on. And then you have the chitta, which is the universal mind, which shape and mold everything to the nanny. And then you have the prana, which gives the power to allow movement to happen. And then you have the fourth one, which is a manta, which is the thing that governs the movement from point A to point B. So it preserves all movement in its cycles to make sure it reaches those cycles, which Dr. King described that as love energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the preservational power of the universe. So those are like the four principles of Shakti. So it doesn't, it molds itself to the situation. That's why it's almost ridiculous to a lot of people say, well, God punish. How can God punish? It's,
Right. Uh-huh. Right.
it's almost crazy to think that God would punish because why? Because all of us are aspect of God. The man and his foolishness began to condemn people for the things that they do. But when you step out on a journey, on a journey of evolution, you have many roads that you can take. So
Mm-hmm.
any road, any road you take will God has omniscience, which is all wisdom. Uh, uh, God has all power, and God is a benevolent God. So therefore, He have laid out a pathway. So any pathway you take, you will end up back to the God source. It may take you a little longer than some paths. Some paths are shorter, some paths are longer. But the law of karma, as Dr. George King described it, is pressure towards conformity. And when you really contemplate and meditate over that, you'll see that what it is that no matter where you go, the law is designed to push and pressure you towards conforming to the divine law to get you back on the path. If you can imagine just a simple situation like if you had a matchbox, I don't know if a lot of people even know what a matchbox is anymore. It's, it's a little box that you take you have a wooden stick with some little chemicals on it, and on the side of the box there's like a lead type substance, graft substance, that you strike that match and then you have fire. If you took that matchbox and you set that matchbox out in a damp place, and that matchbox suck in, because it's made out of paper and other little plastic and chemicals or whatever. If it get wet and you take that match stick and strike it against a designated area, what do you find? You find that you can't make fire.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take that same matchbox and you put it in the sunlight and let it dry itself out, and you pull that match, you pick it up again, pull the matchstick out, it makes fire again. Because why? The law pressured you and pushed you towards following right directions,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
following the law, and that's everything. You know, if you want to make a certain cake or fix a car, you have to follow a particular law. That's not punishment. That's just pressure towards conformity. And that's what prana is. It molds itself to the situation that it's in, and it follows the laws. It have to follow. It cannot go outside of the laws. Now there's many different angles to go, but it's always, if you do it, if you look at it mathematically, it always come up with the right result if you follow the instructions or the laws the way it should go. And that's what all things in manifestation. It pushes you towards conformity. When you look at all the books, you could read 1,000 books or study 1,000, you always go back to that one little thing. That if you don't follow the law, the divine law, things just don't work right. And when you
Mm-hmm.
do, you find you find that everything stabilizes and all the resorts come in. But the thing is knowing how to do it. As simple as that.
So that brings up another question I've had specifically about healing or spiritual healing, or just healing in general as we performed here on Earth. Is that is the need for healing that we have a, because of our karmic position? So, and what I mean is that we suffer illness, disease, and things like that because of our karma, and we're not able to pull directly the prana that is available to be able to sustain ourselves, sustain our bodies, and sustain our health. We have these deficiencies in energy, which causes disease and illness, and therefore the need to radiate energy from one person to another to help them with that deficiency of energy. That's a result of our
Yes,
yeah.
it's a direct resort. And we created the conditions in which we live in. We created those conditions, and it's evident.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we are earthlings, and the earth reflects 50% or more of the energy coming from the sun and other planets back into space,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, speaks volumes of why we can't do what we need to do. Because when you look at raw science, we understand that everything is solidified light,
Mm-hmm.
and that the sun, without the sun, everything on Earth dies. It dies. But we created an environment for ourselves that reflects this sunlight and reflects the subtle energies that's given off from the sun, from the moon, from the planets, to a degree that limit our life cycles, that limit how long we can come onto the physical plane or any realm of existence for in cycles of years or months or hours or minutes. It limits what we can do based on what we did based on how we limited ourselves according to our own karmic pattern that we built for ourselves. We're constantly adding on to our karmic pattern. We're constantly developing ourselves either forward, sideways, or backwards until we hit the wall to push us back. You know,
Hmm.
that pressure that pushes us back, pushes us towards conformity of the law. So it's just like a lot of environmental scientists saying today that that we are killing the environment. We're stunting the growth of vegetation, of animal life, of clean air. By taking out the trees, knowing that trees produce the oxygen that we need to breathe. You know, because why? Because certain areas, and even here in Miami, they've been fighting a tree problem for decades now.
Yeah, the citrus canker and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that there's not enough trees
Oh, yeah, yeah.
to create the proper oxygen.
Hmm.
And I've been in community development for over 30 years, and they always had all these different programs to try to promote planting trees. And it's got so bad that they make sure that when you build a house, you put so many trees there, so many plants there, in order to promote the oxygen level.
Hmm.
And yet, this was a tropical area. When I grew up down here, many years ago, it was forests and trees everywhere. But now most of the trees have disappeared because of development.
Hmm.
So we create our own environment. We create the mess that we live in, and that's our comic pattern.
And so that's why it's said the highest form of healing we can give is the right teaching.
Right.
Right.
It's also said in the mystic circle that there's only one sin, and that
Ignorance.
sin is ignorance. you know, because any other sin that happens, it happens because of ignorance, because we do things that we shouldn't do because we don't know that we shouldn't do it.
Mm. And to everyone joining us, welcome. You are more than welcome to post any questions or comments you have on either the material that's being covered or any other questions or um, interests you may have in the comments. I'll be looking at them periodically, looking at the comment section periodically as I go through the subject material. And today we are looking at the science, doing a study into the power of prayer and the manipulation of prana as we um, cover some of the subject material covered, as we cover some of the material presented in the latest book released by Mr. Nehemiah Davis, The Mystic Prayer, The Miracle Prayer Kit. The power of mind shapes and molds prana into useful tools that we can utilize for our manifested purposes from time to time. Our belief in God is like fuel in an engine for us. It is the mystic prayer fuel that starts the prayer and helps to propel it forward. The practitioner of this prayer method's undying belief in God amplifies the potencies of the power of prayer being called upon, and the unselfish love that springs forth from the belief and devotion demonstrated to the infinite power of God. Earlier, I mentioned the mystic prayer sorry, earlier I mentioned the lecture, The Secret to Personal Prayer. And the very first step um, that Dr. George King mentions is the recognition of God in whatever form that may be for you, whatever um, image or identity God takes for you, or the universe, or the laws, whatever, that it is that recognition, that belief in God. Actually, let me see. I think I found. Hmm. Actually, yes, I did find it. So if you go to cloud.aetherius.org, let me just sorry, interrupt really quickly. This is where all of the lectures and audio content produced by the Dear Society is now housed. Here, there are two lectures. One they're talking about now, The Secret of Personal Prayer. See here, it says prayer is not a haphazard act of superstition. It is a natural, logical, and perfectly balanced spiritual science based upon the all-pervasive energy of love. We'll get to specifically love energy later in the presentation, as well as when we look specifically at the prayer technique. It is a way of invoking spiritual energy and directing it to bring about a predetermined result. Its success depending on positive visualization, intensity of concentration, karma, and other various other definite factors. In his brief but highly limiting masterclass, Dr. George King reveals his own personal secrets of prayer to bring about lasting positive changes in our lives. And then there's another lecture I recommend called How to Make Your Prayers Really Work. And this one is an in-depth lecture on the subject of prayer, how to radiate spiritual energy. Dr. Josh King talks about how prayer works, what happens when you pray, ways that you can enhance this power, the do's and don'ts of prayer, how you can use prayer energy to help heal individuals and the world as a whole, and much, much more. So those are two lectures I'd recommend. There's several others. If you just type in prayer into the search, and you'll find many lectures relating to prayer. Uh, but the secret to personal prayer and how to make your prayers work are two lectures I would highly recommend you taking a listen to when you have the opportunity. Okay, let's continue on. The power of mind shapes and molds prana into useful tools that we can utilize for our manifested purposes from time to time. I think that's what it's ready. Yeah. Knowledge brings with it power. When that knowledge has been digested properly within the mental lines of force of the auric structure, then and only then can this knowledge be applied properly within the karmic fires of action. It is then when all the stored samskaras can rise under the exact karmic pressures needed for the advancement of the individual under the karmic authority. That last point there, it is then when all the stored samskaras can rise under the exact karmic pressures needed for the advancement individual under the karmic authority. That's saying that those samskaras are already there, but then when we engage in the act of prayer, that those samskaras are brought forward or are we placing those samskaras in the aura to be used for advancement at that time when we're under karmic authority?
I know a lot of people look at samskaras as something negative, but there's positive and great samskaras
Hmm.
that's that's been stored up by the soul uh, as from the directive of the spirit, which is the divine spark of God. The seed mantras
Hmm.
that they speak about on the chakras are samskaras. So one of on the journey of evolution, when you develop the power of contemplation and partially meditation, you contemplate and you meditate on those uh, petals, and that's what synchronizes the chakras and release the great knowledge and wisdom that's stored there in those samskaras,
Hmm.
and those divine samskaras, you can say. So yes, I mean, as you develop those positive samskaras, that's there waiting for you to unlock it, is unlocked, and you gain great wisdom and knowledge.
Mm. And so kind of to go into this point a little bit more. So when the soul pushes the Shakti energy down Sushumna, uh, mapping it all the chakras along the way until it reaches the Muladhara and goes into that 3.5 knot configuration, uh, all the directives, those megabytes of energy or some scatters are left there by the soul to assist the consciousness when it begins its evolutionary process to move back up Sushumna.
Right.
And when we engage in these, they might refer to before as these ultra positive karmic actions, such as prayer and manipulation of spiritual energies, we activate those, what do you call those spiritual samskaras to help us evolve and to advance. And one of the potent ways to do that is through prayer and healing and so on. The key to any mystical practice is the ability to obtain control over your imagination. This particular mystical practice of prayer is of no difference. The ability to imagine is something that all man has from birth and uses this ability throughout his life to achieve almost everything he's confronted with. Man's imagination has a magnetic effect on the psycho-mental level of his being, which causes various mental explosive activities that produce the mental images, mental thought forms desired from his mental command. Nope, I think I skipped. These mental thought forms that are produced and manifested by man's interactions in life through the process of imagination are placed on and within the human aura of man. The amount of knowledge possessed on the subject being thought forms, and the desire to put forward toward the subject with the love energy for the subject dictates the lifespan of the imaginative thought forms. These thought forms hang on our aura and creates what I call a karmic signature of the person. There is another lecture. Oh, that's not what I wanted. By Dr. George King, which speaks specifically on imagination. And he refers to that as your only creative faculty. So it's another lecture that I'd recommend you take a listen to. And the description states imagination lies. Whoops, you guys can't see it. Apologies. Again, if you go to the cloud.ethereus.org, look up imagination, you'll find this lecture. Imagination, your only creative faculty. So imagination lies at the heart of our ability to be creative, and controlled creativity lies at the heart of our ability to succeed in life. This is true of success in any field of endeavor, be it in art, science, religion, or even everyday activities like driving a car or cooking a family meal. This is a fascinating and essential insight into the creative process with spirituality as its focus. So in this lecture, Dr. George King talks about imagination and how it allows us to create both on the mental planes and then how we bring that visualization down. So we sustain that visualization and then bring it down and manifest it onto the physical planes. He talks about the mechanisms behind it, um, and how imagination is not our primary, but our only creative faculty. So I'd also recommend you listening to that because imagination plays a key component in the mystic prayer technique. Later on in some subsequent diagrams, Nehemiah takes great effort to go into detail of the mechanisms of imagination and visualization, and how we use this. For example, in the opening practice, preparatory practice, when we visualize the white light and when you visualize the violet flame, what we're doing when we're making these requests, making these mental demands, the effect it has on the aura, how it prepares us for the practice. Uh, Even in mantra japa, visualization is used then, and as we continue on throughout the entire prayer technique, the visualization and the imagination and the visualization is utilized to propel that energy forward out throughout the world. And as mentioned earlier, the amount of knowledge possessed on the subject, this particular subject being thought forms, and desire to put forward toward the subject with the love energy dictates the lifespan of the imaginative thought form. So, in other words, our knowledge combined together with our desire or our will to put forward this energy to the subject dictates the lifespan of the energy or of the visualization that's produced when sending out the energy for a specific purpose. So do uh, take a listen to that lecture, Imagination, Our Only Creative Faculty. And also there is playlists on the Mystic Knowledge YouTube, which Nehemiah does a in-depth series on prayer itself. And as we go through, I'll look for the playlist as we go through today's presentation, look for the playlist and show it for everyone so you guys can go back and reference that as we continue on our discussion of prayer. Visualization. The pathway for the energy is invocation. The power of visualization is an aspect of imagination. In fact, the ability to visualize is a direct result of imagination. In other words, imagination gives mankind the ability to visualize. The ability to visualize opens a pathway for mind substance and cosmic energies to be invoked and then pulled through a spontaneous vortex opening, creating an explosion effect that allows a certain degree of manifestation on various levels of mind frequencies. These manifestations are the thought forms or images that we all see in our minds during periods of imagination. These thought forms hang on the aura and help to distort the atmosphere. This aspect of imagination, called visualization, is one of the key components to man's development. All mystical practices have some degree of imagination and visualization. As stated above, visualization is the igniting force within the imagination. When the student imagines something, it is his conscious efforts of visualization that helps to bring control over the imagination, thereby maintaining these manifested thought forms in a visualized state of being. The more control that is placed over this visualization, the greater power it absorbs and the greater the manifestation becomes. This ability of controlling imagination can also be described as the ability of concentration and contemplation. The greater the ability to concentrate, the greater ability one has over imagination and to visualize something into manifestation. Well, quite a few, quite a lot was given in just those past few paragraphs. Were those considered secrets or not anymore? Kind of feels like they are.
So it's most people overlook that part. On your see if you projecting the screen
I'm sorry?
on YouTube. Is the
It's not, can you guys see it on YouTube? It says everything's good on my end. Let me check.
yeah, you know, in the also the that person of prayer
Uh-huh.
we was talking about earlier. That's in the that's I think we did one in the in the in the diagrams. We did a diagram up for that.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I, I was saving it for later
Mhm.
when we go into personal prayer.
Did we have that on the line online?
I don't know. I don't know if I actually uploaded this one because this is a collection of prayer diagrams that I put
Yeah,
together.
yeah. But it's in the book, the diagram book.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah. I can see it now.
Okay.
Maybe it was just
Yeah, it looks like everything's okay on YouTube side. All right. Guys, if you're unable to see anything or it looks distorted or not able to hear properly, please let me know in the comments and I'll address it. Hopefully get it back up, everyone. But yes, as Nehemiah mentioned, this was a graph that he put together some time ago, um, illustrating the points Dr. George King made in his lecture, The Secret of Personal Prayer. And so later on, we'll get to this as well as several other illustrations and diagrams meant to help us understand the subject of prayer. So I wanted to go moving kind of back and forth between the presentation and some of the diagrams. And then we'll also get into the specifically we talk about the prayer technique. This is again another 3-page diagram illustrating the prayer technique. You'll also find this in the book as well with a bit more uh, explanation on the prayer technique. And then second to last, I'll introduce the Mystic Learning Hall newsletter again, and we'll go through this one and um, hopefully discuss plans for future um, uh, newsletters, or if there's anything you would like us to specifically address in a newsletter type format, you'll be more than welcome to email us and we'll catalog all those subjects together for future editions. Okay. Oops. Over here. Controlled breath techniques. Also, guys, if you're feeling a little saturated and would like me to pause and continue next week or in the next session, do let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll go for maybe another 15, 20 minutes until I find a good place to pause because we're not even halfway through this presentation. So this presentation will probably take a couple of classes. And then there's a part two of this, which may take a couple of classes as well. So, who knows? We may take the full 6 weeks, as was originally projected when this series was first given. So let me know how you guys are feeling, if you want to continue, or if you want to pause here and move on and continue next week, or I'll just keep on going for another few minutes and then um, close out today's session. Controlled breath techniques, pranayama, in the prayer technique. Breath is the main source of power for sustaining man's life within the physical body and maintaining a balanced state of consciousness on the physical mental plane of existence. A balanced rhythmic breath during prayer gives an extra charge to the mystic prayer technique. The breath of man is a result of the subtle currents of life forces traveling through layers of the auric bodies, perfectly balanced to produce various levels of consciousness and levels of energy operations. These currents of vital life forces are known in Sanskrit terms as the Ida nadis and Pingala nadis. The nadis are subtle charged currents of vital energies. Right? Directed and controlled emotions in the expressions of speech. Actually, let me check something really quick because I think this is a new slide 29. Okay. Okay, so a new section. Start a new section at slide. Okay, we're good. Directed and controlled emotions in the expression of speech. Mantra Sastra. Speech or controlled sound is one of the most potent expressions of manifested Kundalini. Sound is a direct result of Kundalini and represents a balanced expression of the two manifested forms of subtle energies flowing through the body, which produce levels of expressed consciousness. Sound is mental thoughts manifesting itself through vitalized energy particles as gross audible sound. The ancient tantric teachings stated that the sensory organ of the mouth has a balanced expression of Shiva, Nada, and Shakti. All right, and here in the illustration, you see the Ida and Pingala nadis reflected in the head. as well as Sushumna Nadi. And then you have here in the mouth, you have an expression of Kundalini power. Shiva, a form of still energies, represents the upper lip because it barely moves. The tongue represents the power of nada, a form of sonic energies, because it is a sonic vibration force. And Shakti, a form of vitalized energies, represents the bottom lip because it is constantly moving during speech. Right, so we have an illustration here. The top lip represents the power of Shiva's stillness in creation. The tongue represents nada power that flows from Kundalini. And the bottom lip represents Shakti power of action. Excuse me. Now, when someone controls his or her emotions and directs these energies towards speech, you can see the powerful impact it can have on the target or environment where this is occurring. The best expression of this can be witnessed in politicians, teachers, preachers, and actors in their speeches and performance before their audience. We have dissected this technique of prayer in order to identify and show what major components are needed to make up the prayer miracle kit that reside in all men and can be used by everyone. The 8 components to this mystic prayer technique is what make up the miracle kit. The following are the components we have discovered from examining the prayer technique. All right, and so we will stop here. And so next time we'll pick up here and we'll look at the 8 components, which is Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, imagination, visualization, pranayama, mudra yoga, invocation, and karma yoga. And then we'll go into detail about each of the components. All right, do we have any questions or comments before we close out today's session? Is there anything you want to add, Nehemiah, before we close out today?
No.
Right. All right. So remember, everyone, the miracle kit behind the power of prayer, the mystic knowledge of manipulating the subtle cosmic energies of prana through prayer techniques. The second book authored by our teacher, Mr. Nehemiah Davis, currently available on Amazon. And if you would like an autographed copy of the book, send us an email and we can make arrangements to have one sent out to you. If there are any other questions or comments, feel free to send them to us via email and let us know if you're okay with us addressing those questions in a subsequent open discussion, or if you would rather have us answer it privately, that'd be fine as well. Additionally, there's also Ancient Language of the Soul, the first book offered by our teacher, Mr. Nehemiah Davis. You're more than welcome to also pick up a copy of this text. And we will resume our study of this text as well as the Miracle Kit in our study sessions at a later date. I will announce that ahead of time to give everyone ample opportunity to pick up these texts, review them, study them, post any questions or comments you may have, and then allow us as a group to study them, dive deeper into the material, and also have the benefit of the author here with us to answer any questions or comments we may have. on the material. Is anything else before we close? If not, then let us close today's session, reciting the New Lord's Prayer. Gave quite a bit of information today. Take your time reviewing it, and if you are interested in anything that was presented today, either the handouts or the presentation I went over, let us know. If there's enough interest, I may upload a copy of the presentation to the Google Drive shared folder that we utilize. Right? The New Lord's Prayer. O divine and wondrous Spirit, O everlasting Lord of hosts, send forth now through me thy great and lasting power. Allow me, Almighty God, the lasting privilege of radiating to all the world thy great love, so that those who suffer may be given the power and energy to rise above their weaknesses. Almighty God, in great humility do I ask you to send forth your power, to give to me this great lasting privilege of being a channel, so that my suffering brothers may be helped and guided and healed and lifted into thy light, so that they who know not may look up, and in doing so receive their higher selves your divine counsel. Almighty God, this day have you granted me a divine privilege. I ask you now to give to me the strength, so that never again will I turn from my inner vision of you. O great peace, great peace, great peace. In praise of your greatness, O God, doth my soul sing. Grant it energy to sing on forever and forever. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attendance and participation. Again, if you have any questions or comments that you would like to, what you'd like for us to address, you feel free to email those questions to us. I think it was mysticknowledgecenter@gmail.com. Do take a look at the mystickknowledge.org website for any resources and informations, texts that we make available for you to download and study, and also on our YouTube channel. Let me see if I can pull that up really quickly. On our YouTube channel, we have playlists dedicated to the prayer. Here's going slow. All right, let me switch to that really quickly, and I'll let you guys go. So here we have a lecture from several years ago, a detailed study on the power of prayer, and then the power of spiritual healing through prana manipulation. So there's several playlists here that go into the subject of prayer. These are given a few years ago. We've also have some more recent ones that also correspond with the presentation I'm going over now. And then there's here called the Miracle Kit of Prayer Power, which also corresponds with the information given in the text. You're welcome to go back and review these playlists as accompaniment both to the text and to the material we'll be covering over the next few weeks. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, and we will see you next time. Take care.